Hey gang, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. My name's Dan. I'm going to move you all in just a second. Let me finish getting set up here and we'll get right to work. Hello, my name's Dan Nelson. Maybe you know that. Right in the middle of a life change. Maybe you know that. Quit smoking, put on 50 pounds, you know. Just kidding. All right. By the way, just for what it's worth, several weeks ago I went into my attic, which is right over that way, where I store most of my paintings, and pulled out over 100 paintings, some of which were over 10 years old. Some were very good. I categorized them out in the hallway. Very good. Started doing something with them. But alas, that has not happened yet. But one of the paintings that's in there, why are we getting a delay? We should not, I'm sorry friends, we should not be getting a delay. Anyway, this right here is on panel. It's the first oil painting I ever finished. It has a number 1 on it, in fact. 2000. I guess that's the only date. The year 2000. Yep, number 1. Huh. I stopped numbering shortly thereafter, but that was interesting while it lasted. That was back in my storytelling period, as you can well see. I still enjoy doing fantasy storytelling paintings, but I've never found a market for it. So if I want to pay the mortgage, I just stopped doing them. All right, let me move you guys so you can see, cover you up. Do you feel kind of like a falcon? You know the way a falconer puts his hood over the eyes of the falcon so that they can't see and take off. So that's what I'm doing to you guys. Now I don't know if I can get a more, no, I can't. Sorry, you're going to be at a little bit of an angle. Oh, that'll work. I'll do my page at angle. All right, let me show you what I'm doing. This is a commission piece. This is a photograph that I took and actually then doctored up quite a bit in Photoshop. And it's a private school here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm doing it for a family of a young man who's graduating from this school this spring. It just so happens I have already done one of these, same school, different angle, for the same family. So this is actually the second commission. So the reason I went in my computer and found this image is because this family's gonna have 2 of my paintings, and I want to see exactly how I did this one, because I want them to be in a fairly similar style, right? So I'll be looking at that periodically as I go along to remember, how did I do that? Hello, Jack Liar. What are we going to do? That is a good question. So I mentioned the change of life, and then I promptly abandoned the subject. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So I really have had a transition of careers, quite literally, after being a full-time artist, as many of you know, over the last 15, 16, 17 years now. Suddenly, I find myself operating slightly. Now I'm a part-time artist, full-time pastor, full-time musician. That's a little bit hard to explain. It's partly because a lot of my ministry, if you let me call that, and I know not everybody listening to me is comfortable with me using such words. Sorry, get over it. Sorry, and now I'm being snarky, aren't I? Anyway, I actually do more playing of instruments than I do preaching. That's an interesting, so I'm a very unconventional. Our church meets in a parking lot, and we don't know how long this is going to keep going. Maybe we're almost finished, but I don't think so. And it's not a big group of people at all. But anyway, so I've basically changed in the last 6 months from being a full-time artist to being an artist, musician, writer. I'm doing a lot more writing, which I'm very excited about. My music and my writing very much took a back seat during the years that I was a full-time artist. And frankly, I'm now quite delighted that my art, my music, and my writing have moved into a more prominent role in my life. I can't promise, I would if I could, but I can't promise, but there's a very good chance that this coming Friday, day after tomorrow, that I will actually do, in a sense, my first rollout for you guys online. I'm thinking about going downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, and doing my thing, my new thing, which is set up my easel, paint all day, play music occasionally, periodically throughout the day, and then in the evening when the sun goes down, pull out all the stops, so to speak, and play music. So I'm sorry I can't promise. Pencil it in your calendar if you're interested, but the weather looks a little iffy, so we'll see. But if it's not this Friday, it will be fairly soon. I will be doing that hopefully on a regular basis. Let me describe, and forgive me for being so self-focused here for a minute, but some of you old timers, you wonder what happened to Dan? After 4 years of daily art adventures, now I'm monthly art adventures. Well, it's been several months of transition. Again, switching from a full-time artist to a full-time artist, musician, writer entails a lot of adjustments, a lot of money, a lot of preparation, blah 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 blah. And but I'm just about finished with that. For instance, one of the big projects is last week I finally finished a box about the size of a old steamer trunk. There we go, if you can picture what an old steamer trunk. 40 inches long, 20 inches tall, 20 inches wide. Built it myself, I'll show it to you. And it holds 50 wind instruments. Well, to be fair, a lot of them are harmonicas and whistles, which are small, fit in a small space. But besides that, trumpet, flugelhorn, French horn, soprano sax, tenor sax, flute, all the harmonicas and all the whistles, and a couple shofars and a Jew's harp. That's what I play. My musical gifting is quite unusual. I'm not a songster. I don't sing really. I can make sounds with my voice. I can, you don't want to hear me sing solo particularly. I can sing backup all right. Anyway, I don't play songs. I play sounds. That's really weird. I'm an abstract musician. There you go. I've never said that before, but that's what I am. I am an abstract musician. That means I'm more interested in an aural, A-U-R-A-L, an aural experience or a sonic experience than I am a song. So very strange. You'll understand it once you see it in operation. So I play these 50 instruments, and oh, by the way, a whole bank of electronics. If I take my small pedal board, it's pretty simple, but if I have my big pedal board, I have 3 synthesizers. Play guitar too. I have 3 synthesizers piled up on top of each other, aurally, sound-wise, piled up on top of each other. 2 or 3 processors and all special effects. So, and then loop pedals. So I build up. So that's how I play. My goal is not so much to entertain people as to influence the culture of the city in which I live. That sounds weird. Get used to weird if you watch me. I practice, in fact, that's one of the big adjustments in the last 6 months. After being a full-time artist for many years and practicing as much as I can squeeze in the last 6 months, I've switched and I'm practicing virtually every day and usually several different instruments every day. And believe me, I understand if I were a real professional musician, there'd be a difference between virtually every day and every day. That's a big difference. And hours and hours every day. Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's get off that. I miss you guys. And hey, Paul's here. Yeah, I've hurt my right hand. No, I think you know. I think you're being funny. But for those who don't know, I wear this to protect the paper. If anytime I'm sitting down working on paper in particular, where my hand is resting on the paper, I'll put on this cheap cotton glove with the holes cut in it to protect the paper from the oils in my hand. All right, let's talk about art a little bit, shall we? So this is a technique, I'm usually pretty careful to call it a watercolor sketch, so as not to be confused with watercolor, straight up watercolor. I call it watercolor sketch so that I can have permission then to use a number of unconventional techniques. The first of which you see here, which is the use of watercolor pencils. And while the whole time I've been broadcasting, I've been doing this, but I haven't said anything about it yet. And that is, I started out with a very pale yellow. You guys could probably not even see the lines I was making. Then I moved to a more like a pumpkin yellow, yellow-orange color so I could see it. And then when you do a darker color on top of a lighter one, the lighter one essentially disappears. And now I'm doing the same thing for the third time. Now I'm using a fuchsia, cool red, pinkish purple pencil, and it's darker than the earlier color that I did. So the earlier color essentially disappears. So this is a good trick. This trick of drawing in progressively darker colors is a really good trick. It can be used in many mediums. I use it, of course, in my oil painting. Well, in the acrylic stage of my oil painting, which is underpainting in acrylics, and usually the first color that I draw in is a light color, and then I progress to darker and darker colors. But this right here, this watercolor sketch technique, is really where I developed that technique, this technique of drawing in progressively darker colors. So I don't have, of course, then I'm assuming you catch on, I don't have to erase in any way the earlier shades, the earlier drawings, because again, they mentally disappear. And I don't mean that they literally disappear. I can still focus and see the orange and the yellow, but your eye ignores it because your eye sees instead the darker color. So this is and the reason is, I'm assuming you can understand this, the reason I do this is so that the yellow was my first rough sketch, the orange was my second rough sketch, getting more accurate, more precise, more detailed, making corrections, and now I'm on my third rough sketch. Does that make sense? So, and then here's the fun part of doing this in the watercolor medium, is that when I do washes over this whole watercolor painting, the water, of course, will pick up and enliven, if you will, all of these colors. Let me show you the finished. So here's what I showed you earlier. Here's the finished painting, and let's see if I can zoom in here just for a second. For one thing, so here you can see very clearly in the finished painting the yellow watercolor pencil that I did to indicate the flag is still quite visible, and it's purely abstract. There's no intention to say, oh, there was a yellow glow around the flag that day, right? That's absurd, right? You understand? Here, let's zoom in another part. Right here above this roof, this porch, you see there's an orange or red line up there in the sky, and another one up there. You see those same red lines down here in the grass. So one of the things that this does, besides just creating fascinating abstract elements throughout the painting, oh, here's the grass, I'm sorry, you were closed off for a second, is it creates a unified palette, the unified canvas. Forgive me, it's paper, but you know what I mean. So like there's red here in the trees, red in the grass, red in the building, red in this, red in the... You would expect red in a red, white, and blue flag, right? But the little bits of red, that's just one color. And then there's yellow and so on and so forth. So it's just a real fun effect, in my opinion. That's why I do it, because I think it's fun. Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was fun. But I almost forgot here. I need to put people in this scene. I used to make that mistake a lot. Do scenic paintings like cityscapes without any people in them. The classic for me was a time about 10 years ago. I spent a week painting in Manhattan. Just loved it. I'd love to go back and do it again. But I spent 6 days, I think, painting. It was great. And one day I spent all day long in Columbus Circle, where the U.S. Main Memorial is, right at the entrance to Central Park. And of course, the place was packed with people all day long. But when I got home, I discovered I'd painted the entire scene without one human being in it. Oh, I laughed at him. I still have that painting. It's designated. I have a dear friend that I'm going to give it to as a wedding gift, even though he's now been married about 5 years. And it's going to be, the title of it is An Introvert's View of New York. My friend and I share the characteristic of being essentially introverts. Perfect New York is a city with no people in it. Anyway, so try not to make that mistake here today. I will put people. I went to this school, as you can imagine, just a week ago. Got permission. Well, didn't get permission. This is a commission for one of the families who's had 2 kids at the school. So I went to the office, put on my mask, of course, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if you know this or not, but school administrators across the world, at least across the Western world, generally frown on old men with cameras walking around their campus taking pictures. I don't know why. I've never figured that out. I remember one time about a number of years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I think I was at the famous Duke University, and I think it was another commission I was working on for somebody, and I was walking around just with my phone, not a big fancy camera, but Duke has a lot of these, old world, beautiful Gothic buildings, and I was walking around taking pictures of the buildings. All of a sudden, I had this young professor type woman, running at me with her hands flailing and her voice screeching. I was kind of embarrassed. I mean, she should have been embarrassed, but I was embarrassed. And I went, oh my. So right in front of her, I showed her that I was erasing all the pictures that I'm not sure that any of her students were in the picture, but I tried to say, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm an artist, blah, 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 blah. She had no interest in my excuses. She did her duty, whipping my little fanny off that campus. that I recognize a pedophile if I see one. Keeping the world safe for democracy. Duke University. Keeping the world safe for socialism and all that. Who's chatting? Oh, you guys are chatting up a storm, and I'm ignoring you completely. Yeah, listening to Bob Dylan, I could do that too. Fuchsia and pink or red are not the same color. Thank you, YW. Good, Paul. I'm glad to hear it, that you've stolen that. How long will I be streaming? That is a good question. I will tell you that I'm an inveterate too long of a streamer. I know the rules, so to speak. I know on YouTube you're supposed to keep all your broadcasts short if you want a lot of followers. Evidently I don't want the followers well enough, so I don't worry about it too much. So my guess is this particular stream will last probably about an hour, and then I will take a break, and if I have time, I will commence with a second broadcast right on the heels of this one. So YW, I think probably an hour. And of course, as I said, that breaks all the sociological rules of YouTube. You're not supposed to do hour-long live broadcasts, but who cares? This is about me, not you. I'm just kidding. This is about me having fun. All right, fuchsia. Let's see what color. Oh, purple. They call it purple. That's funny. I would call that fuchsia. But anyway. All right, now tiny bits of the yellow are visible, and the orange, and the fuchsia. I'll stick with fuchsia. Let me go back to fuchsia and chalk. So I did promise the headmaster of the school after we had a conversation, and he really did trust me, but he of course has to be able to answer board members and parents and so forth. We saw a weird old bald man walking around the campus taking pictures. I guaranteed to him that I would take no pictures. No students would be in my photograph. So, all right, now I have a decision to make. I can either do my first wash. That would be starting with probably a 2-inch brush. I would even use a 3-inch brush if it was within reach, but it's not. So, first wash, at which point some of the lines will disappear and everything will blossom. If you're a watercolor, you know what I mean by that. If you're a watercolorist, everything will. And then, of course, I'll have to pause and wait for this to dry before I can do. Okay, that's option number 1. Option number 2 is draw a little bit more with another colored pencil. Picking up a couple over here. There's some options. Red, that's not quite enough, it's not darker. And I've got 2 blue, I think it would be blue. I got some browns, but brown generally is as you know, in any medium, brown is a color killer. And I'm not interested in killing my colors. I'm more interested in making the painting more color, not less. So probably be blue, one of these. Trying to see what it says. Bright blue and iris blue, whatever. They're just making up stuff. The third option, so 3 options. 1 is do a wash. Number 2 is do some more darker pencil. That would be, so I've done 3 drawings so far. This would be my 4th one. The third option is do some pen and ink. And in this case, because I think this is what I did in this one, I think I just used, felt tip, waterproof, that's really important, ink. Oh, and before I decide, let me tell you one of the ways I operate then. I think most people would assume in a painting like this that the artist would do all the drawing first, that is, say, all the pen and ink, and then paint it, sort of like a coloring book, lines first, color last. But that is certainly not the way I do it. Typically, I go. Sorry, crash. typically I go back and forth and back and forth. I'll draw some, paint some, draw some, draw paint, draw paint, draw paint, draw paint. And so it's not as simple or predictable as simply drawing and then painting. It's very intuitive. There's no good no correct answer to what I just said. Which am I going to do? Just what do I feel like doing? If there are any corrections that need to be made, yeah, I'm going to draw a little bit more. I'm going to start with the lighter of these two blues. And there is a slight correction I need to make up here. All the buildings on this campus, beautiful campus in a beautiful part of town, and all the buildings are fairly contemporary, except for the original house, a Victorian, not quite a mansion, but the Victorian house that was on this property. I don't know if it was originally a school or not. I should probably know that, but I don't. But I'm finding I didn't draw the house very well, so I'll make some corrections right now. So in my opinion, as an artist, the Victorian clapboard house is the most iconic, most beautiful building on campus. Also, this boy that's graduating, he played football, so that was why it was quite important that the family asked that I could in some way incorporate the football field into the painting. So, in fact, I went on the football field and took a picture this way. The part in Photoshop that this building was largely covered up by big white tents that were set up. So in Photoshop, I took pictures and removed the tents. So, but it's kind of nice because it says St. David's School Warriors. So I had, he played for the Warriors. So anyway, I'm fairly happy with the composition. By the way, just for those of you who may find this interesting, with the fourth layer of drawing that I'm doing here, I've switched over, at least at the moment, I've switched from what I call my sketching grip, which is side saddle like this, to traditional drawing grip. So I use this kind of grip for details. Those are just some those are not clouds, those are just, although they could be interpreted as such. So those are just abstract marks. Also, just for what it's worth, this lamp is iconic in my opinion. There's a lot of these around the campus, and they're kind of old world artsy. So I put one there, even though literally there is not actually one there. I doubt that even the young man who is graduating from this school, I doubt that he'll, unless he watches this video, I doubt that he'll ever look at the video and say, "Hey, wait a minute, there's not one of those lamps there." And so he probably won't say that. Instead, he'll see it and go, "Oh yeah," he'll identify with it, that these lamps were sprinkled throughout the campus. Question. Yeah, gotta be blue, right? Someone asked, do you like the sketching of architecture over the processes of painting? That is a good question. Somebody already said that. Why did I already said that? Well, if you are familiar with my my oil painting technique, there's actually a lot of correlation between the two. I start besides doing a wild abstract painting underneath any painting, after that's over, I start by drawing with long handled, fairly skinny brushes like this, and that step is very comparable to what I'm doing right here. So I do draw, if you will, quite a bit in my architectural oil paintings. And indeed, I love architecture. I just really do. When I was an illustrator for many years, late in my illustration career, really, but I did a lot of architectural renderings for architects, for builders, and so forth. So that was a good fit. That was a good fit for me and my interest. Now, let me zoom in here just for a second. Can you see how I'm drawing this building now for the 4th time? And you see all these erroneous marks. Like there's orange, there's fuchsia, and so it's the 3rd time I've drawn this horizontal line. And out here in the sky, see, here's my first and second marks. Here's a yellow mark. Oh, here's a yellow mark way out here. You guys probably can't see it. Then orange. The question might be, well, isn't that going to, isn't that a mistake? Isn't that going to show up in the finished painting and, make the viewer uncomfortable because it looks like a mistake? The answer is no. The answer is yes, it will be visible in the finished painting, absolutely. So before I go any further, I must say it's apparent, right, that I'm not doing hyper-realistic, photorealistic, very real, whatever. I'm doing real artwork, not anal retentive artwork. Sorry, I don't usually call it that, but sorry, something came over me. There's a grain of truth there. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not going to die in that hell, but the answer is yes. All these marks, well, some of them. If there's one that I don't like when the painting is finished, I just rub it with water and erase it in that way, right? So if there's one, but there won't be. None of those will bother me. And those of you who are regulars, I got a number of you commenting today, which is delightful, who are I'm not familiar with your names, so I'm glad that you're commenting. And forgive me if you're regulars, because you're going to hear the same old stuff, the same old stuff that I've been saying for 4 years. One of the ways to describe what I think is good art. Now, super realistic art is always good to a point, and it will always have a market. There will always be people that want to buy super realistic stuff. Okay? There will. And I can do super realistic, and I've done it in the past many times for many years, but no. In my opinion, the beauty of art is when the artist has the ability to do super realistic stuff, but has learned, if you will, it's usually some kind of epiphany, some kind of the skies open, the angels sing. Now that was an angel singing if I ever heard one. And the artist discovers that it's not about accurate rendering. It's about line, shape, color, design, value, texture. The beauty in art resides primarily in the abstract elements: line, shape, color, design, value, texture. Line, shape, color, design, value, texture. And by design, I mean composition, structure, the way the shape. Some people add shape to that list. I don't, because I think it's a redundancy. No, wait, not shape, form. That's right. I'm sorry, form is the one. Shape is definitely an abstract. Like this shape of this shape triangle here, this square, those are shapes. But some people add form, and I disagree. That's all I'm gonna say about that right now. Let's not go any deeper. Anyway, so how do I explain then that this erroneous, this mistake, orange line, fuchsia line, blue line, there may be more because I'm not even finished yet. There may be more lines. And the answer is that it all creates visual interest, visual interest, visual interest. That's just, again, I could go on, but that's enough. That's enough. And if you've heard me before, you've heard me, one of my most familiar rants is that the first half of our art journey, I think this is an ideal art journey. The first half of our art journey, we, artists, are learning how to paint stuff, that we're learning how to render, learning how to paint and draw stuff that looks like stuff. Okay? then, and not everybody makes this transition, and that's all right. I'm not here to be their overseer or dad or anything like that. But many of us, the second half of our art journey, we learn line, shape, color, design, value, texture. We learn how to paint stuff. The first half, we learn to paint stuff that looks like stuff. Here's a painting of a street light. Second half of our journey, we learn to paint stuff that looks like paint. It's kind of a smart aleck way of saying line, shape, color, design, value, texture. I should make up a song. Line, shape, color, design, value. Never mind. Never mind. Not today anyway. You should be thankful. So it looks like, evidently, I wasn't sure that I was going to redraw the entire thing in blue, but alas, it looks like that's what I'm doing, and that's all right. So, or at least most of it. I'm not sure I'm going to try to do everything. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. So I still have three options. One could be the next layer. I could draw again in pencil. No, I've drawn it 4 times in blue. The only thing darker than that would be a very dark brown or black, and I'm not going to do those. So I'm done with the pencils, at least unless I decide to add something. I'm going to pick up one of these waterproof. This is Accurate, A-C-U-R-I-T. You probably can't see that. A-C-U-R-I-T. Professional waterproof technical pen. Permanent, acid-free, non-fading pigment ink. They're pretty nice. I have all different kinds, but I'm going to do a little bit of drawing. So whatever I do now in ink, I'm sure you understand. This is my final answer. Like, wants to be a millionaire. This is my final answer. Unless I'm just making a terrible mistake, which I'm not. These lines that I'm making right now will in fact be will be visible in the finished work of art. This pen's a little bit dry. Doggone it. Let's try the other one, see if it's any better. It's just the bad part about all of these felt tip markers, if I can call them that, for want of a better name. They are felt tip markers, right? One of the bad things about them is they just don't last long at all. So you have to buy whenever I buy one, I always buy more than one. Okay, so a little bit of explanation. What I'm doing here, I'm doing some ink drawing. I'm not going to do, by any means, I'm not going to do the whole thing. Not at all. I'm focusing on the focal point of the painting, if you will, which is this lamp, this gable, and the classic old Victorian mansion, I'll call it that, in the background. And I'm going to draw just a little bit and then switch to doing some classic watercolor washes, and I'll certainly do that before I end this broadcast. And then I think I'll have time to do another broadcast this afternoon. I have other engagements tonight, but by golly, it's good to be with you guys. Who else is talking over here? Paul says, I am familiar with your technique. You've adopted it. You go on, man. Oh yeah, good. I love it. Starts out with watercolor and then switch to acrylic. I like that technique. Oh, hello, Pink Haze Pie. Good to hear from you. And Monique, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, Monique, bless you. It's so nice to have you. It's been a while, hasn't it? I know it sounds crazy, but I really, really do miss all you guys. Monique, you probably weren't here a little while ago. I was once again talking about the shift in my career that has taken place in the last 7-8 months. And I am hoping, now here very soon, I'm not sure it's going to happen Friday, but it could happen as soon as this coming, day after tomorrow. I am going to, for you online people, it would be an unveiling of my new career. In a word, I've gone from being a full-time artist to being a full-time artist, musician, and writer. Now, what all those things have in common, number one, they're all communication medias, but they all have to do with beauty. So I've actually designed a logo already that I've called Adventures in Beauty. Anyway, Monique, good to have you here. Let me interrupt that and talk about, I need to be careful not to do too much drawing, by the way. You know, so even the funny way that I'm holding the pen when I'm doing foliage trees up here, and I have a trick that I employ quite regularly. I just went around the tree this way. Started here and went clockwise. Now I'm going to turn around and go the opposite direction. This is just one crazy way of doing trees, foliage. So now I have two lines, and the reason for going opposite directions is because if you go like the naturals from left to right for a right-handed person, but if you do that too much, it's very easy to accidentally make the same shape over and over and over again. Have any of you ever experienced that? You think you're drawing, you feel like you're drawing random shapes, but then you come back the next day and go, oh my goodness, like whoop, 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 you know? So one of the ways to do that is go draw one way and then come back and draw going the other direction, and your hand will not accidentally make the same kind of shape. So we want trees, of course, to be random looking, not to accidentally slip into repetitive hand patterns. So did that make sense? So go draw the tree going around the bush one way, and then draw going the other way, and then come back. Okay, here, since I've that far into it, then do little dots inside the tree. That's like sky holes, traditional sky holes, and then outside the tree, that's like little leaves. Let's see if I did it over here. Oh, I'm sure I did. Oh yeah, definitely. Again, that's just a little trick. Now, just for what it's worth, this is kind of interesting. I've drawn this whole thing. This is now my 5th drawing. 4 times in pencil, once in ink, and I'm still making significant changes on this house. and again, I just want to point out that that's okay. All the, what you might call erroneous marks, like, can you see that? Last time I drew that 4th drawing, I drew the pillar right there. Now I've moved it over about 1/8 of an inch that way. So one could be concerned that won't those mistake marks, won't they show up as mistakes? Now, if they really do, I can rub them out because it's pencil, watercolor pencil. But no, they don't. They in fact show up as interesting abstract marks. It's hard to explain, but it's true. All right, I'm going to put some bushes that don't actually exist. I just realized, you know what, bushes up here. And again, no, my customer, well, I'd say, hey, there's no bushes there. Trust me, they won't. They will. I'm positive. Trust my drawing. That's a, you know. Okay, be careful. I'm almost drawn enough ink. I try to say that to my students all the time. Please understand, if you're an artist, nobody's going to, you don't hang your painting on the wall and then hang the photograph right next to it and ask people to give you a grade. Hey, how'd I do? Is it close? Is it accurate? Did I do it right? Do you hear the absurdity of that? That is not what happens. You hang this on the wall, nobody ever sees that. He sees that photograph, generally speaking, right? So you do not have to slavishly copy everything that's in a photograph, because Again, you're not being graded according to how accurately you copied or rendered. All right. Again, these are just abstract, purely abstract marks. All right, finally, let's do some painting. And I have a fairly standard approach. Let me show you my water. I have several watercolor trays and kits around. What I mean by that is, you know, like here's one of my travel kits, and of course the colors get used up. So then you put new color from your tubes. This one needs some reviving, but that's not my smallest. I have probably 3 kits smaller than that. I'm just saying this is just typical. This is my biggest one, actually. I have a couple in between. This is a Paul McCormick model. Doesn't matter a bit. But I just want to show it to you because now I'm going to put it off to my left, I mean, and you won't see me dipping the paint in that, my brush in that very often. But you can see it's right there. Okay, I don't think you need to see that too much. Ah, good conversation going on. Hey, Pink Ace Pie. Dan, I'm glad I caught you watercoloring. Remember that time you did watercolor, slurped up the paint like a blotting? Yeah. You had the same problem? Oh no. What happened? It was the sizing. No kidding. Really? My goodness, that is an answer to a mystery. As you know, the watercolor paper is supposed to be sized with the gelatin, and the gelatin is water, so if it's soaked in humidity, it can get compromised. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. And then some persons, on another topic, I found writing helps a lot with draw. Yes, it does. I agree. All of these things. You're right. Very much. They are related, aren't they? So if the paper soaks up the paint too much, so you can't manipulate it, the sizing is probably bad. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. YW, you're very kind. Thank you. It is amazing. I've always been avocation. But yeah, quite unusual in one's mid-60s. Not while others are thinking of retiring, I'm actually changing not changing careers, but changing skill sets. Let me read a little bit more. Good, you've been waiting for me to share that. Thank you so much. And writing helps, yeah. Hockney trees, and even lollipops. That's a great description. I know exactly what you mean. What are you working on now? Not we know. That's a great question, YW. We love to talk about. I'm sorry. I'm reading all of your chats. Good. I love it. Yeah, copying comic book stuff. You know, that is a career that at many points in my career I thought, man, maybe I should get into comic book art. Those people are amazing. Generally speaking, if you don't want to know what I think about, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to do something else. So there's my first stroke. I'm just spraying this whole page with water. In fact, now, did you see that? Did you see how the watercolor pencil came to life? I am doing one thing right now that I think is exemplary, and I would strongly encourage any of you who are painters to emulate in this regard, and that is the big brush. My guess is that most of you wouldn't quite have the courage to go with a brush this big, and that's, I'm pointing it out because I'm saying, yeah, you should. Now, I've got several tricks up my sleeve, not the least of which is, since I'm doing what I call a watercolor sketch, I give myself permission, the luxury of using opaque white media late in the process, right? So you classical watercolors would gasp and kick me out of the club. Correct, that's why I call it a watercolor sketch, so that I have the freedom to break the rules like that. Let's go back a little bit to blue. Oh, I'm doing something here I really should point out to you. I've ranted and raved on this so many times over the years, but it's been a while. All right, but hang on, I need to look at what I'm doing and evaluate here just for a minute. Okay, the last thing I was going to talk about, landscape. Really, anybody, still life, this would apply to you as well, and even portrait. Anytime you're painting a flat plane, you're rendering a flat plane, like the side of a building is classic, okay? Or if you're inside a wall, classic. Anytime that you are painting a flat plane, you do a diagonal shadow across it. So that's what I've just done. There are two primary flat planes in this painting. Big ones. There's small ones, but the big ones. This building right here, and this, I don't know what it is. It's a concession stand, or my guess is that's what it is. So that's the sun shadow. See, and they're the same angle. Those are. Another trick. This is me. This is Dan Nelsonism. I am extensive use of tissue, Kleenex, in my watercolor painting, as you see me here. Put down the color, then lift it up. Watercolor major in college, if there is such a thing. I was a painting major, but all my work was watercolor. That was 40 plus years ago. So I have a lot of years of experience, but as far as how many hours, in the last 15 years, I far exceeded, oil painting far exceeded my number of hours. So I've done a lot more oil painting in my life than watercolor, but more years of what, I don't know if that makes sense to you. All right, I think that's a good place for me to stop. I'm going to let this dry completely. And when I come back, oh, hang on, let me just do a little bit. Here's another watercolor trick. This is an old bristle brush, sharpen the other end in a pencil sharpener, just so I have a wooden point. It's handy. And this is a bristle brush. And a bristle brush is often very useful for lifting, because it's like a brush. It's scratchy. It's stiff. So there, I just wanted to lighten that lamp right there in the middle of the painting there before. Oh, I might want to do something. No, I'll do this later, but I'll probably use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to make this lamp pole. It's actually wood. Yeah, but it's light. Later, I'll do that. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. Let me see the rest of you. Yes, Paul, you're exactly right. Paul's here. The reason I like watercolor, me too, is the way the colors leach and bleed into each other, blossom into each other. Exactly. Doesn't every teacher have that goth stage? Yes, I think so. I think so. Oh, why is the end pointy? Because many times you can scratch the painting either to soften an edge, or to lift out, to make it wet, to make the point wet, blot, and then blot it. So it's a real handy, convenient tool. And a traditional, as you know, traditional watercolor brush has a similar thing. This point is for scratching and doing all kinds of things, but I've almost never used even though that comes with the traditional brush. I've never used it because just, I don't know, it's not sharp enough. Maybe one of you does it, but I've never found that particularly helpful. But I have several brushes here that I've stuck in pencil sharp edge on the bottom, but I've never used it.